The year was 1988, and heavy metal was finally about to be recognized by the Grammy Awards for the first time. It was supposed to be a glorious moment. Instead, it became one of the most embarrassing incidents in the history of the Grammy Awards. What happened that night? Find out next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to a brand new episode of The Metal Dude Abides. After a very long break, we are back in our Fixing the Grammy series. And this is a very special episode because tonight we are going to be covering the year 1988. That is a huge year in heavy metal and Grammy history because this will be the very first year that the Grammy Awards recognize heavy metal music. Now, it may seem counterintuitive if you weren't there, but in 1988, heavy metal was the biggest music on the planet. Albums constantly reaching into the platinum status, sold out arenas all over the world. But yet, very little radio airplay, very little MTV airplay. Heavy metal was not really recognized, and it could become a very frustrating point of contention for those of us who wanted to see our heavy metal with better exposure. Now, two institutes in particular were awful about this. The first one, I guess you can guess, was the Grammy Awards. The Grammys had been around for 30 years and had never recognized heavy metal as an art form. And not only did they not recognize it, they had rarely given any awards or nominations to any heavy metal bands. We were just discussing the fact that I've been doing this channel we've been covering the Grammys since the late 60s, and not one heavy metal band ever got Newcomer of the Year, Album of the Year, Song of the Year. We had a couple of guitarists nominated. Eddie Van Halen got nominated. Yngwie Malmsteen got nominated. Occasionally you'd see that, but no wins in the entirety of the Grammys. Now think about that for a second. Heavy metal is hugely popular, and yet we can't buy a win at the Grammys. The other stalwart of music, if you will, that was had a very bad reputation was Rolling Stone magazine. This publication was supposed to cover the best music. Well, it kind of became a counterculture magazine way back in the 60s and 70s, and unfortunately was still stuck in the 60s and 70s. So between Rolling Stones being stuck in the past, the Grammys not recognizing heavy metal, radio stations weren't playing heavy metal, MTV wasn't playing heavy metal, unless you were on the Headbangers Ball, it was kind of a frustrating time. But the ice began to crack in 1988. Believe it or not, Metallica made the cover of Rolling Stone. And then the Grammys announced that they were going to have a special category for a heavy metal performance. And Metallica was one of the bands that was nominated. So as we enter this stage, we as metal fans are finally getting the recognition we deserve. This was supposed to be a coronation night for Metallica. All was going to go well. Until it didn't. And the Grammy Awards gave the Grammy in 1988 to Jethro Tull. Now we're going to talk about all of the nominees and the eventual winners here in a minute, but let's just put it to you this way. Jethro Tull's not heavy metal. Jethro Tull did not attend the awards because they were under the impression that Metallica was going to win. The crowd was under the impression Metallica was going to win. And again, Jethro Tull had been a progressive rock band, maybe you could say hard rock band, but clearly not the type of band that should be winning this inaugural award. This really put egg on the face of the Grammys. They really became laughingstocks. Even non-metal fans were stunned at the ridiculousness of this award. So, We always make the joke, what's better, not being recognized by the Grammys or actually being recognized by the Grammys and then have this happen? So anyway, this channel is dedicated to fixing that. We're going to go through each of the nominees and we're going to say, are they worthy or not? And if they're not worthy of being a nominee, we're going to replace them with someone who is worthy and then give out the award as it should have happened back in 1988. So without further ado, let's go to the nominees for Best Heavy Metal Performance of 1988. Our first nominee is one of my favorite all-time bands, AC/DC, with their album Blow Up Your Video. Now, AC/DC at this point is in a bit of a comeback. If you remember correctly, AC/DC was at the height of their powers in the late 70s and in 1980s Back in Black. And after that, they had kind of some tepid commercial success. For Those About to Rock did okay, but then came the disasters known as Flick of the Switch and Fly on the Wall. They had become far down on the heavy metal pecking order. But as luck would have it, Stephen King came knocking, and they were doing a movie adaptation of his book Maximum Overdrive and picked AC/DC to do the soundtrack for that movie. And as a result, they put out an album with a single called Who Made Who, and the comeback began. They also put out a lot of their older music in kind of a compilation form. It kind of revived all the old feelings, and people started to realize AC/DC was pretty darn good. Well, their next album following that is right here, Blow Up Your Video, and it is a pretty good album. I own this album. I love this album. Went and saw them on this tour. However, I don't believe it is of the quality that would be the top 5 heavy metal albums of the year. So AC/DC is getting pitched. Our first nominee is being replaced by one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time, Mother by Danzig. At this point, Glenn Danzig has left the Misfits and has embarked on a solo career. And his first solo album was a huge success, including this song right here. Now, Mother is a scathing review of the PMRC, and in particular, Mother is Tipper Gore. For those of you who don't know, Tipper Gore was the wife of former Vice President Al Gore. This is at the time when Al Gore was a senator in Tennessee. She was kind of the face of the PMRC, and so she drew a lot of ire, including right here from Danzig, Mother, our first nominee. The Grammy's second nominee, Iggy Pop with his song Cold Metal. Now you're going to hear this a lot. Comeback, because AC/DC was coming back from their success in the early 80s. Iggy Pop's comeback is a little bit longer in the tooth. You see, Iggy Pop was the frontman for the band Iggy Pop and the Stooges in the late 60s and early 70s. They broke up, and Iggy Pop had been on a solo career for about a decade, but had not really had a lot of success. This was a comeback because this was the first time he kind of heavied up his music, if you will. But make no mistake, Iggy Pop was still not heavy metal. Hard rock at best. And I think that that's the problem with this initial category. When you say best heavy metal hard rock performance, people are going to focus in on the term heavy metal. AC/DC, okay, you could make an argument for them. Iggy Pop, you cannot. Iggy Pop is more of a punk band, more of a hard rock band, but nothing near heavy metal. This is an okay album. Again, it's a comeback for him because he did heavy up his sound a little bit. But, sorry, Iggy Pop is also getting pitched. To replace the second nominee, we're going with Judas Priest and their album Ram It Down. Now, this is not without controversy, and I get it. There's a lot of people who didn't really like Ram It Down, but I think I know the reason. The reason is this. As the story goes, Judas Priest was approached by the directors of Top Gun and wanted to use their music in the soundtrack of the movie, and Judas Priest famously turned them down. Top Gun became a huge movie, and the soundtrack became a very big seller. And so Judas Priest, being a little singed by that experience, was approached again at this point in their careers to be on the soundtrack of an Anthony Michael Hall movie called Johnny Be Good about some high school football player. And not wanting to lose out again, Judas Priest agreed. Well, there's two problems with that. Number one, this movie was a flop. And number two, they promoted it by doing a cover of the old Chuck Berry classic Johnny Be Good. Now, I think some people get a little carried away. It's not a bad song, but it's not really what heavy metal fans were looking for in 1988. So I believe the marketing of this album really caused its downfall. But if you get past the bad marketing, there is some excellent tracks on this album. The title track, great. There's a song called Heavy Metal, very good. Some of my favorites, Come and Get It, Hard as Iron, Love Me to Death, and the epic Under Blood Red Skies. So if you have never heard this album, maybe you heard Johnny Be Good, you were a little bit turned off by that. I get it. But there is much better on this album, so much so that it's going to be our second nominee. The Grammys' third nomination is at least going to break the mold a little bit, because their third nominee is Jane's Addiction for their album, Nothing's Shocking. Now, AC/DC had kind of been a band of the past trying to make a comeback. Iggy Pop was definitely a band from the past trying to make a comeback. Jane's Addiction was a relatively new band that was at the peak of their powers. This album and the one following it are two of the most beloved Jane's Addiction's albums in their catalog. The problem with this selection is that Jane's Addiction is not heavy metal. Kind of, again, a recurring theme here. They are very similar in style to a band like, let's say, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And that's an easy kind of comparison to make, because when they break up, the guitarist goes and plays with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Flea was involved in all this. They were kind of one of those bands. If you want to know the kind of music that Jane's Addiction was, they're the ones who started Lollapalooza. And it was basically, when it first started, as an alternative band, kind of Lollapalooza, not metal. Jane's Addiction, really, the guys in the band couldn't get along. They broke up after a couple of albums. But make no mistake, this is really good stuff here. I think that this would be an excellent, I don't know, maybe when you start doing your nominations for Best Rock Album, maybe this is where Jane's Addiction should have come in. But they should not be in the heavy metal category. And the Grammys are 0 for 3, because this is also getting pitched. We're going to replace that with a nomination of our own. Coming in at number 3, Ozzy Osbourne with his album, No Rest for the Wicked. Ozzy Osbourne, of course, is the legendary frontman from Black Sabbath, but at this point he's embarked into his solo career. His solo career got off to a brilliant start with guitarist Randy Rhoads. They put out 2 of the best albums you're ever going to hear. But then Randy Rhoads tragically dies in an airplane accident. Enter the Jakey Lee era of Ozzy solo career, and I don't know, in my humble opinion, it just didn't work. And the reason is simple. Ozzy never really accepted Jakey Lee, because Ozzy still missed Randy Rhoads. So that chemistry just never really worked itself out. It wasn't Jakey Lee's fault. It's not Ozzy's fault. It just never really worked. Same thing happened with Metallica, by the way. After Cliff Burton's tragic accident, they never really accepted Jason Newsted. Jason Newsted's a great bass player, but the band missed Cliff. They missed their old mates. So I think it becomes very difficult to kind of step into someone's shoes after someone passes tragically. Now, Ozzy, during the Jakey Lee era, his alcohol use skyrocketed. his drug use skyrocketed. He was out of shape, he was out of focus, and again, I think it really hurt the music. But now enter a new guitarist. Youngster Zakk Wylde shows up on the scene, and Ozzy is reinvigorated. He hits the gym, starts losing weight, starts lifting weights, starts building up muscle. He's in the best shape of his life. He reduces his drinking. He reduces his drug use. I don't know that Ozzy's ever been completely sober, but he kind of kept it under control for a bit. He was like a new man, and it shows on this album. The focus that he and the songwriting on this album is top notch. If you want just a particular highlight, though, the song Miracle Man is one of the most hilarious satire pieces ever. Televangelist Jimmy Swaggart had been very tough on Ozzy, really been riding him. Well, when Jimmy Swaggart had a little bit of a scandal, Ozzy pounced in the most hilarious way. So if you want to get a sample of this album, I'd go right there first. Let's talk about the Troublemaker. Coming in at the Grammys #4 nomination, Jethro Tull with their album Crest of a Knave. Jethro Tull had not really been culturally relevant in well over a decade. They were one of the biggest bands in the world back in the 70s. Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, Bungle in the Jungle, all of that came out. Locomotive Breath, really good stuff. But that was a decade ago, at least. Now, Jethro Tull, still going today as far as I know, very big in the progressive rock arenas. But again, this is a heavy metal award. And Jethro Tull really had no business being nominated, let alone winning the darn thing. And I think Jethro Tull knew it. They were embarrassed by all of this, and Metallica ribbed them for years. So I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen here. Jethro Tull, Crest of a Knave, you're out of here. We're going to replace it with our fourth nominee, Queensryche, and their album Operation Mindcrime. When I was putting this together and I was deciding who was going to stay and go, I could not believe that this album did not get a nomination. This is where you have to look at the Grammys and just laugh at their futility. This is one of the most brilliant albums of all time. Many people might say this is the greatest heavy metal concept album of all time. Now, kind of similar to the Judas Priest story, they were approached for a movie for this Operation Mindcrime, and this happened and that happened, and the movie never ended up being made, and that could have hurt. I mean, it obviously hurt them, but it should not have, because this album is so good. This really put Queensryche on the map. They were a great band before this, but this really brought them into mainstream metal and really brought their familiarity up in 10 notches. This album is one of the best albums of the entire decade, let alone just this year. Well, looky here. The Grammys for the 5th nomination put in Metallica for their album And Justice for All. You know, when you put in a category in the Grammys for heavy metal, I guess you have to at least have one heavy metal band. I guess that was the thinking here. I think the Grammys were pulling a fast one. They were kind of under pressure because, as I said in the intro, heavy metal was very popular. So they figure, look, we'll make a heavy metal award. We'll draw maybe not millions, but thousands of people to come and see the heavy metal bands, and then we'll just ignore them as we always have. Well, it backfired spectacularly, because not only did you make yourself into a laughingstock, you pissed off people. I don't think heavy metal fans ever went back. I think the Grammys started to sink into that irrelevance right after this, and no one ever cared about a Grammys after this. But we'll give them at least some credit. They gave Metallica a nomination, a well-deserved nomination, by the way. And the winner is Metallica and Justice for All. The one Grammy heavy metal band they nominated is going to be our winner. Hey, I'm not going to make the same mistake the Grammys did and choose someone else over Metallica. That snub has, again, gone down in history as one of the worst moments in the history of the Grammys, ruined their credibility, and like I said, if not millions, thousands of metalheads turned their backs on the Grammys, never to return. This album is a fantastic album. We talked about it a little bit. Metallica has lost Cliff Burton. This is their first album post Cliff Burton. And all that sadness, all that anger, all that resentment and bitterness is poured out into this album. One of the darkest, most heavy Metallica albums of all time. Now, many people will focus on probably the biggest hit, One. Famously, this is when Metallica puts together their very first music video for One, and it just is such, again, maybe people could consider it the best heavy metal video of all time, and it just launches Metallica into the stratosphere. The Black Album comes after this, and they become this, from this ignored band, from a band being snubbed by the Grammys, to literally the biggest band on the planet, not just in 88, not just in 89, but pretty much my entire adult lifehood, Metallica has been the top heavy metal band in the world. So congratulations to Metallica. They should have won it, but here, as we fix the Grammys, they do win it. They walk away with the big prize. You know, I know Christmas is over, but the Metal Dude's going to give you a little bonus here. Because it seems like, at least in the first years where they were trying to figure out how to do these Grammy Awards for heavy metal, they couldn't quite figure out whether they were heavy metal or hard rock. And so they kind of bounced back and forth. This year it's like heavy metal, hard rock performance. And then after this debacle, they kind of split up the heavy metal and the hard rock awards. And it's a little bit of a mess right here. So as an added bonus, I'm going to give you 5 nominees for the best hard rock performance of 1988. We're going to start out with Cinderella, Long Cold Winter. Now, this is a little bit of a hot take, I will grant you, but I think Long Cold Winter is the absolute best Cinderella album, even better than their multi-platinum hit Night Songs. Our second nominee, Walk Away by Dokken. Dokken, at this point, it's a little bit of an odd song. You might have missed this, and I'll tell you the reason why. They put out a live album and then stuck Walk Away at the very end of it. It's kind of like a solo track at the end of a live album. So if you're not like into the live album, you might have missed this one. But it is one of the most brilliant songs in the entire Dokken catalog. Don Dokken's voice in particular is pristine on this. Our third nominee, Mean Street Machine by King Cobra. I'm not really sure why King Cobra never got the commercial success that some of these other bands did, but their album King Cobra 3 has 3 or 4 of the best songs you'll ever hear. But the best of them, in my opinion, is right here. Mean Street Machine. I believe this was also featured on a video game back in the day that kind of gave it a little bit of an underground phenomenon. Coming in at number 4, Close My Eyes Forever, the great duet between Lita Ford and Ozzy Osbourne. We talked about Queensryche, that being the greatest concept album in the history of heavy metal. This probably is the greatest duet of all time. What a brilliant decision to put Lita Ford and Ozzy together. It's creepy, it's haunting, it's beautiful. Our 4th nominee. And finally, our 5th nominee, Cult of Personality with Living Color. Living Color, this was kind of their introduction to the world. I believe this was their debut album, and what a debut it was. This song, probably of all the songs I've just listed, probably the most popular song, the most widely known song, and actually continues to be widely known as it has been the theme song for wrestler CM Punk. And the winner is Dokken with Walk Away. It's kind of sad, really, in that this is kind of the last great song from Dokken. One of the reasons why this is on the end of a live album is we're really never going to see these guys get in the studio again. Oh, they kind of make up and try to make it work a couple times, but the magic was gone. Don Dokken was recording in Arizona. I think the rest of the band was in California doing the tracks. Never the two shall meet. It's really a shame. Dokken, if you've been a fan of the channel, you would know they put out a string of some of the best hard rock albums of the 80s. But kind of like Jane's Addiction we talked about, they just couldn't get along. And so shortly after this, Dokken breaks up. George Lynch, the brilliant guitarist, he goes off to do Lynch Mob, which is also very good. Don Dokken kind of keeps the name alive and does some kind of solo work. But like I said, they try to get back together a couple times, but they never can recapture the old magic. This is, again, go find this song. It is the last great song from the great band Dokken. All right, this is the part of the episode where we talk about some of the other awards the Grammys gave out that year. Because let's face it, they botched their inaugural Heavy Metal Recognition Award, but their other awards are no great shakes either. For instance, Best Female Performance went to Tina Turner for Tina Live in Europe. Now and this is like the third or fourth year in a row Tina Turner's won. I don't understand it. Tina Turner's not terrible, don't get me wrong, but there are better female singers out there. And this year, in particular, you're going to find out that the metal dude has a little bit of a weakness for Sinead O'Connor. She puts out her unbelievably good Lion and the Cobra album. One of the most raw vocal performances you'll ever hear. It is fantastic. So the award for Best Female Performance actually got to Sinead that year, not Tina Turner. For Best Male Performance Singing, Robert Palmer, Simply Irresistible. Oh boy. And this is the second year in a row Robert Palmer's won. Listen, if you look up the word vapid in the dictionary, you're going to find Robert Palmer's music videos in there. There's nothing to them. Robert Palmer, no. Stop it, Grammys. This is a lounge act who happens to have a bunch of, scantily dressed women parading around in his videos. That does not make him a great singer. You are giving this award to Robert Palmer in a year where Queensryche put out Operation Mindcrime. Have you ever heard Eyes of a Stranger? Rob Halford is out with Ram It Down. Have you heard the singing on Under Blood Red Skies? Once again, the best singers in all of rock and roll are right here in the heavy metal category, and they don't even get nominations. It's ridiculous. Now, they have this thing called the Best Rock Performance, right? This is kind of where we kind of started to come in with the metal performance, with this rock performance. And this year they gave it to U2 for the song Desire. And once again, let me point out, I'm a huge U2 fan, but the Grammys ignored U2 through pretty much the entire decade until Joshua Tree comes in. Now they went, oh, U2 is really good. We need to change our... And so now the Grammys are overcompensating. After they screw Metallica up, spoiler alert, they're going to overcompensate and give Metallica like 14 Grammy Awards through a stretch where Metallica didn't deserve those awards, right? Same thing happens here with U2, where they ignored this brilliant decade of work that U2 had done, but now they've realized, oh, U2's really good. We need to get them in here. Now they're giving them awards for songs like Desire. Come on, people. I just mentioned Long Cold Winter by Cinderella, Walk Away by Dokken. Living Color, Cult of Personality. These are all better songs than Desire by U2. But we're in that overcompensation mode again. The Grammys. What a joke. For Best Rock Instrumental, that year it went to Carlos Santana. And I will say, with a caveat here, that Joe Satriani, even though it was on an older album, did get a nomination for Surfing with the Alien. So once again, every once in a while, we'd at least get a guitarist recognized in the nominations. They never won, but they get a nomination. But once again, let's talk about Metallica, the band that was supposed to be your ticket to understanding heavy metal. They put out To Live Is to Die, which was pretty much an instrumental that was dedicated to Cliff Burton. Come on, at least give that a nomination. So, whether they recognize us or they don't recognize us, in every one of these rock categories, they completely flubbed each and every one of them. The Grammys are a damn disgrace. And that's why we have this channel, to go through each of these years and to point out the absolute ridiculousness of an award show that is supposed to be the pinnacle of musical excellence. Another crappy job by the Grammys. In fact, I think 1988 may go down as the worst year in the history of the Grammys for all the reasons we just got through talking about. Now, this is the brand new format for this Fixing the Grammy series. So we're going through and going each of the nominees that the Grammys had, and then we're either going to keep them or lose them and give you our own and then award our own winner. I hope you like the new format. If you have suggestions, put them in the comments below. I think this will be the format moving forward, but I'm always open for format suggestions. And who do you think should have won the Grammy this year? Who would your nominees have been? I like to hear from you. So if you have some strong opinions of who should have been nominated, who should have won the award that year, again, put them in the comments. I'd love to hear them and discuss it with you. And in the meantime, next time around, we're going to be doing 1989. So you don't want to miss that episode or any of the other content we do on the channel. So this is a great time to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and become members of the Metal Dude community. I have to say that we recently hit 500 subscribers. And while that might be small potatoes for a lot of channels, that's a huge accomplishment. I'm so grateful to every one of the 500 people that have decided to subscribe to this channel and be part of this community. Thank you. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. Take care.